All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. This time we're looking at French perspectives on the conflict in Ukraine, and particularly we're going to focus on Emmanuel Macron's role in all of this and the potential military involvement of France. And we've got a really interesting piece here from French journalist Jacques-Marie Bourget, featured on the YouTube channel Traveling with Elaine. So let's dive in. The central question that Bourget really seems to be getting at is Macron genuinely trying to mediate between Putin and Trump, or are his actions really driven by some other, ulterior motives?
Yeah, that seems to be the big question that Bourget is posing, and he really doesn't pull any punches when it comes to criticizing Macron's proposal, Macron's idea about sending French troops to Ukraine.
Yeah, Bourget is really not holding back. He actually goes so far as to call this proposition irresponsible, especially when he brings up the current state of the French army, whether they're actually ready for a mission like this.
Right, and he kind of compares the situation to, the UN peacekeepers in Lebanon, and he seems to suggest that French troops would face similar challenges if they were sent to Ukraine.
Yeah, it's interesting because he brings up some very specific examples about the logistical difficulties that the French army has faced in recent operations. Mm-hmm. He talks about, lack of resources, the personnel shortages, problems with maintaining their equipment. Mm-hmm. It really paints a picture of, whether France actually has the capacity for this kind of military intervention.
It definitely raises the question of whether they're ready for something like this. And Bourget, even more pointedly, goes on to argue that this troop deployment would actually serve American interests more than French ones. He's essentially accusing France of being, like a vassal to the U.S. in this situation, where French soldiers would basically be sacrificed for a lost cause.
It's really about, France's place in this conflict, right? Can they really act independently, or are they just kind of, a pawn in a larger American strategy? That's a pretty, powerful accusation.
Yeah, and Bourget really takes aim at Macron himself, He accuses him of being obsessed with international recognition and trying to, insert himself into this Putin-Trump dynamic.
And it gets even more interesting because he goes as far as to insinuate that some of Macron's advisors may actually have economic interests in Ukraine and that they could be, potentially profiting from the conflict.
Yeah, he kind of throws out some specific examples like the involvement of certain French industrial groups in, arms contracts or reconstruction projects in Ukraine. And he's basically suggesting that these financial interests could be influencing French policy. It's a pretty bold claim.
It's really striking, how Bourget sets up this contrast between France and Russia. He really portrays Russia as, defending its legitimate interests against Western provocations. And he specifically points to Macron as being, the leader of these provocations. It's a very, kind of black and white portrayal. He paints Putin as, this strong leader defending his country's interests, while Macron comes across as, kind of a puppet being manipulated by the U.S.
It is a very strong stance, and it seems to reflect, a certain distrust of the West in general. It's like, Bourget is part of this school of thought that sees Russia as a force for stability against, American imperialism.
Yeah. Now, what about French public opinion on all this? Does Bourget think that the French people are on board with Macron's approach?
He's very skeptical. He doesn't think that Macron's current popularity, which he sees as being, fueled by this kind of anti-Russian sentiment, he doesn't think that actually reflects any real support for military intervention.
Yeah. He suggests that the French media are presenting a very biased view of the conflict, heavily influenced by American propaganda. He seems to think that the French people aren't fully aware of what's really going on.
Right, exactly. And he even goes so far as to say that, if they knew the truth, the French people would be horrified by the idea of, their children being sent to fight in Ukraine. It's like he's accusing the government and the media of manipulating public opinion, using the conflict for these geopolitical goals.
Yeah.
He seems to be really concerned that France is headed down a dangerous path here, going against its own interests.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in a nutshell, Bourget's analysis offers a pretty critical and provocative perspective on France's role in the Ukraine conflict.
Yeah.
He really forces us to question those official narratives that we hear and to think about the real motivations of the players involved.
Definitely. It's a really thought-provoking analysis, and it highlights how important it is to get information from a variety of sources and to not just blindly accept those official versions of events.
Exactly. It makes you wonder if Bourget is right, how big is that disconnect between those political decisions being made and how the French people actually feel about this conflict?
Yeah, that's a big question, and that's something I think we all need to be thinking about.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we hope that this exploration of Bourget's analysis has been informative for you. We'll be back soon with another topic.
See you then.
All right.